Hello, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast. I'm Justin Sloan.
Is that what this medium is called? Yes. Hi, I'm Paul
Yeah, what are we
Zeidman.
doing?
It is just Justin and I today. And if for those who've been following us on video, Justin's not wearing headphones today.
Yeah, I'm trying something new. I'm liking it. Just this little thing right here, and so much less claustrophobic
Cumbersome.
feeling. So, yeah, cumbersome. Yeah, and everything's going well. How are you?
Things are good. Things are good. I've got a list of stuff that I've watched and some
Mhm.
positive news on the screenwriting front. So we can start with
Oh,
the reading watching list.
cool. Mine is short, so I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, I'll say, yeah, I'll give two maybe because one ties into what I was thinking I would talk about today. The first is Star Wars Shadow of the Sith, which is an
Hmm.
audiobook, and I'm loving it. So I've tried one or two other Star Wars. I mean, I've tried a few, but I've tried a couple that were kind of like it was harder for me to get into. But this
Hmm.
one, like the whole way, it pulls me in. And then I have this problem with thriller books sometimes. This is not a thriller, of course, but thriller books where like it starts off really cool, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sold, and then it starts jumping around points of view, and I'm like, I don't know where I'm at anymore. But this one, even though it jumps around points of view, it's doing a great job of keeping me in the
Hmm.
zone. And one way it does that, which is cool, is it has the soundtrack thing going. So when you know it's like a bad guy character who's going to be
Oh.
there, it's kind of playing this background almost Darth Vader-ish music, and you're like, okay, this is a bad guy whose point of view I'm in right now. And then when it's in somebody else's point of view, it'll say play something more optimistic and heroic, and you're like, so it kind of helps you orientate yourself to where you don't
Sure.
like get lost in whose point of view you're supposed to be in right now or where you're at. Yeah, so I'm having a lot of fun.
So the question is, who's the reader on that, or who's the narrator?
Yes, I have it right here. It is Adam Christopher. He also wrote a Stranger Things book,
Oh,
so
really? I'm
which is
sorry, he wrote
interesting.
one, or he was the voice on a Stranger Things book.
All right, sorry. Yeah, this is the author. Who is the
Okay.
narrator? Doesn't say. Isn't that weird?
Oh, is it
It's got to be
Audible?
somewhere I can see. This one I got through the library, the
Okay.
Libby app. So I'll have to Google it up while we talk. So as I
Okay.
talk,
Sure.
what did I
Sure.
put? Shadow of the Sith.
Right.
I'm
Well, you look
also
that up.
playing a game called Genshin Impact. I've been playing the heck out of that with my son, and that's been a lot
Mhm.
of fun. And here we go, narrator. So yeah, I would say that those are my two things this week. Genshin Impact is kind of similar to Legend of Zelda, the new ones,
Okay.
but the new Zelda games. But I would say that it personally works better for me. So for people who are curious, yeah, check it out. Lots of mythology and fun stuff in there. Okay, narrated by William Demerit. Do you know who that is?
I do not know that name. Is
Yeah,
he
the
an
majority
American actor or a
narrator.
British actor?
American, I think. He also did Snapshot by Brandon Sanderson. That's another one I would recognize. I haven't read
I'm
Snapshot,
not
but I like
really
Brandon
familiar with
Sanderson.
audio. I mean, I know of audiobooks. I've just never actually listened to one. So,
Yeah, interesting that he doesn't have any other Star Wars ones. This is only
hmm.
Star Wars. Maybe it was, and this is a relatively recent book. I think it was published in 2022. Yeah, June 2022. So only a year old. So maybe this is the narrator's chance to finally launch into the Star Wars
Oh,
universe. That'd be cool.
or maybe well, is it's because it's Star Wars, so does that mean it's still a Disney property? So maybe Disney's like kind of rejiggering like who they get to read the books.
Yeah, I don't know if how much they have their hands on the publishing side of things. That's a good
Hmm.
question.
Okay.
And it's canon, so you'd assume they have to have some kind of hand in it. So.
You would imagine so. I've been busy with watching stuff that at home I watched. Haven't watched it in probably like 10 years. Watched Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And just another reminder of what a brilliant writer Shane Black is.
Hmm.
Because and also he directed that one too, but it's just a really just solid stuff. It makes me want to read the script just to see everything that how it translated from the page and onto the screen. My daughter and I went to see Across the Spider-Verse, and so that
Nice.
was great. Loved seeing it. The only two issues I had with it, the sound was a little weird in the theater,
Yeah.
so some of the dialogue was a little muffled. And the other thing was there was this woman who we were sitting near the back. There's this woman on the other side of the theater. She was laughing at almost everything, like even during the serious parts. And
She's high.
it was just really weird. And I was like,
Yeah.
did someone lace her junior mints or something? It was just, oh my God. It was just like a one
Yeah.
o'clock in the afternoon show. So it was just really strange. My daughter and I were both like looking at each other every time she'd do this, like as the movie went on, just like, what is this lady's problem? But so I do want to see it again. So I don't know if I'll see it in the theaters, but probably definitely buy it when it comes available for home video. And the other thing, this
Okay.
is something we never really cover. Uh, it was a gift to my daughter. We went to go see the Book of Mormon. because it's playing
Oh,
here.
sweet.
And we've already seen it, but it's one of her favorite shows, and it was great as it always is. And lots of jokes and great songs, and just it was a really wonderful evening. And it's great to go to the theater. And I guess again, we don't talk about that much, but so anytime that opportunity comes to say, hey, we saw this great show and it was a live performance, yeah, I will definitely throw it in there. So if Book of Mormon is
Yeah.
coming to your area, I highly recommend seeing it.
Awesome. Really cool. Yeah, I'd love to go see more live performances. All I've seen is like the Disneyland
Yeah,
Lion
I
King
was
thing
gonna
that they
say
put
you have
on.
to see all the kid friendly stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We saw the Frozen one, which is really cool. The one that they have at the Hyperion Theater or whatever it is there, which they
Oh,
don't
okay.
do
So the
since
one in
COVID, which
Disneyland.
is, yeah,
Is
the
that
one in Disneyland.
oh, is
And
that
those
it's like
really
35
are
minutes
great.
long or something?
No, they're pretty long.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know how
I
long
thought it
they
was
are,
like a
but
really condensed version of the movie.
I
Oh.
mean, it's definitely long enough for my father-in-law to fall asleep in. Let's see. How long was the Frozen show at Disneyland? We got to know this now.
Okay, well, while you're
Yeah,
looking that up,
55 minutes. So
50,
not
okay,
not
that's
too
not too
long.
bad. Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah,
I guess that's enough attention span for small children.
yeah.
And the big things, some contest news. I'm thrilled. My animated fantasy script, The Unlikeliest of Heroes, came in third for Story Pros in the family/teen/animation category. So I'm quite psyched. I've been a semi-finalist with other scripts, but I've never been a finalist, and definitely have never made it to like the bronze medal position. So that was a thrill and a half.
What order was
And
I on that one?
what's that?
I said, what order did I come in on that one?
I don't know. Did you
I'm just
enter
joking. I
Story
didn't. I
Pros?
don't think so. No.
Oh, well, no, but you and I both made, I was going to say, we both made quarterfinals for emerging screenwriters animation. And so
Yeah,
that was exciting. So, and I
that's where
think,
my joke came in because I didn't know. I forgot that I'd entered that. And you're like, hey,
oh
by
yeah,
the way, you're a quarter. And I'm like, oh, sweet.
yeah, there's so many contests. I'll see an announcement, an email come in, and I'll have to really ask myself, did I enter that? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times it's like 6-8 months after the last deadline where they start announcing winners or
Well, you
placing
know
or
why that
whatever.
is too. It's like I always tell myself I'm not going to enter this year, and then I just some random night I'm sitting there and I'm like, what else could I do to succeed? I guess I'll just enter some contests just in case. And then it's just like happens that I totally forget I did it the next day. It's like
Sure,
I'm not
sure.
doing
Oh
contests, and
yeah.
then oh wait, I already did it. Oops.
Well, I'll put it on like, the little star or whatever on my email. And so I'll just have this long list of constantly this growing list of starred emails. And I'll have to go back
Yeah.
every once in a while. Okay, what did I star and why? And I'll be like, oh, registration for this contest or, confirmation for this thing for Austin, that kind of thing. So yeah, so I've got more than a few starred emails for contests. So yeah, I think so that was quarterfinals. So semifinalists, I think they announced that next week. So should be interesting to see how that develops.
Cool. I'm sure
Mhm.
we'll win, both of us. The
Yeah.
first year ever, we have 2 winners.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yes. Cool. What else? Any other big news on the screenwriting fronts?
No, not really. And because of that contest success with Story Pros, I've revamped the query letter I had for that script. So I've already sent it to a couple of managers. And I don't expect to hear anything anytime soon. And also I think with the strike, that's really slowing things down. That new potential clients are not a priority as to already existing clients, and especially with dealing with struck companies and production companies, I think it's just going to be a really drawn out process.
Yeah. Even like my managers, they're out there like on the picket line sometimes. So like,
Oh
if I
wow.
wanted to talk to them about stuff, that's the place to do it probably. But if
Mhm.
it's like getting on a phone call, it's a little harder.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, I don't have a lot going on the screenwriting front. Like everything with the strike meant it slowed down. So before the strike happened, I got them like a revised version of my feature, the one that everybody seems to like the most. And then there was an idea that I would work on a pilot over a period of time. And I'm like, well, the strike's happening, so I'm not in a rush. Maybe word on the mouth is word of mouth. Word on the
Word of
street
mouth.
is that the strike might end around September. So we'll see if that's true. And then if so, that's kind of my deadline for when I would finish this if I get serious.
I would imagine a lot of writers who are trying to get into the guild, or at least find a rep or whatever, that they're really trying to make the most of the summer, because as long as the strike's going on, things slow down. And hopefully they're not of the mindset of, oh, I can just kind of swoop in and take all those jobs that all these guild writers don't want, and not realizing that's not a good thing to do. But hopefully they are making the most of their summer and just kind of like cranking away on all of their scripts.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also have some stuff that I thought we would talk about that was about that is about research. So I've been doing
Okay.
a lot of like research and just in history of like this is one topic we could discuss to see if you have any thoughts too, because there could be research in terms of researching for whatever you're writing, how to get into
Hmm.
the zone, if you need like the frame of mind, like you're a method actor style writer,
Sure,
research for
sure.
that maybe. But specifically for the game writing side of things, which I probably don't cover enough. I should probably bring some game writers on at some point. The problem is when they're working for a company, they all feel a little like, oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. And
Hmm.
but you know, with layoffs galore and everything, I guess there's always a good time. We actually just watched a good documentary, by the way. It's by No Clip. No Clip does a bunch of video game documentaries, so to throw that in there real quick. And so they did one on Telltale games, you
Oh.
know, where I used to work, and it was like on the closing of it, so the after effect,
Mm.
and so that was kind of weird and therapeutic and emotional watching that and being like, whoa. And then like hearing sometimes they would call out and you're like, oh wow, they're telling the truth. And other times they'd say these things, you're like, what? Where did they get that idea from? So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, so the point was I was saying is like research for me and talking about like how much I put in on like getting ready for video game jobs and stuff. Do you feel like you do much research for
I
all
think
these
it
animation
depends
scripts
on
and
the
whatever else?
story. Like, so when I was working
Mm-hmm.
on my Western, I was trying to make it as factually valid or factually accurate as I could. So,
Yeah.
because trains are a big part of that story. So I was looking at, I had to learn about, what goes into a train engine or a steam engine, and like, what are the parts of the locomotive? What could I incorporate into the story? And also, I was like, okay, this is when I want the story to be set. So I had an idea for, a plot device, and I thought, okay, what's something that's historically accurate? And so I found this thing. I said, oh, that actually times out perfectly, and so I was able to work that in. And a lot of people thought, it all came together. So yeah, I think doing research really helps you in the long run. And what's probably happened the most for me, and I'm sure this happens for a lot of other writers, is you may do a ton of research, but you only may end up using like a handful of things. But I think it's
Mm-hmm.
still good to have them, because some writers just figure, I could just make it up as I go along. It's a story. Who's going to care if it's, that accurate or it's that true?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like on screenwriting, the majority of my research will come down to the inspiration side of things, probably.
Hmm.
However, so like one pilot I was working on and with the managers, I don't know if how much I should give away, but whatever. Uh,
As much as
the
you're
idea is,
comfortable with.
yeah, it's kind of like Below Decks meets Jack Ryan. Below Deck meets Jack Ryan. So it's like
Okay.
you know, super yachts and all that kind of stuff. And so for that, of course, a lot of it is like watching stuff like Below Deck and however much I can handle. I can't handle too much of it because I start going crazy trying to watch that kind of weird stuff. But for people who don't know, that's like about a crew and the people on a super yacht and all the insanity that ensues, like reality TV style. So you get the idea. But yeah. So I was like, oh, that sounds like interesting. Um, to give you some idea of why I'm like hesitant on it is because I started writing it and I was like, oh, this isn't really like it sounded cool in concept, but then the way I was approaching it, it kind of felt too much like everything else that's already been done. And so I'm like going
Oh,
back a
okay.
step and rethinking how
Sure.
I can approach it in more of Justin Sloan style, which, you know, is a little more either I go like a trippy kind of sci-fi, grounded sci-fi with some almost
Hmm.
dark angles, or I go more like The Boys, like over the top. So I got to figure out like somewhere in there that makes me excited about writing it, while still being able to fit as a sample, right? For all these TV like procedurals and whatnot, because that is kind of
Well,
the idea is it should kind of feel like those, but
right. So here's a question. Just so when you do the research, do you help find that helps kind of add to your writing coming across in Justin's voice? So it's kind of like, if you didn't have the research, would it be a different script? Or does the research really make a difference in how you put it all together?
yeah, I mean part of it is just like that kind of stuff. I wouldn't really know enough about it
Okay.
for it to work. And so a lot of this was I was setting it in a certain region too. So I was looking up a lot about the region and looking up. There's a lot of news articles about actually something very similar to what I was writing about, like the character and the situation they're in. And then there
Hmm.
was a lot of like heists and robbery attempts, whatnot, you know. So I was reading about those. It's like, oh, okay, this could be definitely good motivation for. So a lot of
Sure.
it's more about that, like finding the details and finding the background to who the character could kind of be. And then of course I go and make up a lot of the actual drama and like the
Right.
background of what brought them to that moment.
It's interesting because the story that I'm working on now, that uh it's it's a sci-fi adventure, but I'm trying to keep it somewhat grounded. So I kind of think like, okay, so even though it involves, monsters and made up gadgets and all that kind of stuff, I always think like, is this scene kind of like, does it come across as realistic enough? It's rather than just
Mhm.
like, all out, all out bonkers. And I'd rather have it be more realistic, just populated with all of these kind of like fantastical elements, because I think that adds to the enjoyment of the story. At least that's my hope, and that's kind of how some of my readers have reacted too. So I think in the end
Yeah.
it does pay off.
And I think for that kind of, for like any kind of fantasy or sci-fi or
Hmm.
horror or any of that kind of stuff, research is going and knowing what else is out there so that you make sure you're not, copying it inadvertently. As can easily happen with that kind of stuff, because a
True,
lot of people don't
true.
know it's something's cliche because they're just not well versed enough in that genre. And I also think video games are a big part of that because so much great storytelling is in video games nowadays.
Hmm.
So if you're gonna go write some cool sci-fi story and you're like, oh, I'm gonna write it, and there's something that's like a Groundhog Day on a spaceship or something like that. Well, that's kind of been done. So go out there and research and know that you're just writing the same thing somebody else did. So if you're gonna still do it, find a way to do it in a new way that you haven't thought of before, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, like with my stuff, like I was talking about the gadgets, like I was just kind of like trying to come up with cool sounding names. And then I had to actually go on Google and said, is this actually a thing?
Yeah.
Am I actually referencing something that has the same name, but just something totally different? And I think I kind of got lucky that the two story components I came up with, that there one is like a variation on it, but it's nowhere near what I was talking about. So I think I'm kind of safe in that as well, in that regard.
Yeah. Hey, tying this into our AI tools for writers and very
Mm.
relevant with now in the strike and everybody hating on AI. Here's one way that AI is freaking awesome is for this kind of stuff, like research. Like if you're gonna Google something, instead of Googling it, I find the answers so much easier to look up on ChatGPT.
Oh.
So, for example, if you're like, oh, how many books are there about Star Wars, or what are the main ones that are canon and stuff like that, I'd say always fact check. Go.
Hmm.
But if you put that in ChatGPT, it's going to give you some awesome answers. If you're like, what are the main themes addressed in each of those books, or like the main books, or whatever, or which main one should I be considering reading?
Hmm.
It'll pull them up and give you a little summary. It's just amazing. Like I tried Googling the same thing that I was putting in there to find the answers, and I had to like scroll down and look through several pages before I find an answer, and then you got to scroll down on that page to see where it is in there.
Hmm.
It's because I like to fact check because I think that's smart, especially with GPT, where it could just make up random things. The best Star Wars book is written by Justin Sloan. Oh, nice. Could be. Yeah. So, but that's been wonderful on the research front. Like I was playing a video game for research purposes for an interview, and I was like, okay, I want to. The game is awesome and it has a lot of story and it's all over the place. And so I was like, okay, what is the condensed version of the story of this game? What are the main themes? Who are the main characters? And I put all that into ChatGPT, and it just gave me great answers. And having played
Wow.
like 30 hours of the game, I know that what it's saying is true. So that's awesome. I just hadn't like been able to put that into my mind in the proper way. So
So
see,
wait, so you played the game for
great.
like 30 hours. Where did the chat GPT aspect come in? Was that near the end or in the middle
Yeah,
or
yeah.
even in the beginning?
I mean, I'm definitely not near the end of the game either. It's one of those long games. That's why I was
Okay.
like, okay, I'm going to be playing this for another 100 hours or so, which
Oh
at
my
my
God.
rate will take me like a year or two or three. Kids and everything. So yeah, that's where I was like at the end of that 30 hours. I was like, okay, good. I got a good understanding of what the game is like and the main
Hmm.
things, but I know that it's going to take a long time before I get the full picture of the story. And obviously this is like a 4 paragraph condensed version of it. So it's not the full picture.
Sure,
You'd still have
sure.
to watch YouTube videos at least. So that's another research method is watching YouTube videos of like game playthroughs or summaries of a movie or all these. They have so many great ones out there. But kind of this combination of like looking at that and then going and finding some YouTube analysis videos. And those for this specific game were all like 3 hours minimum. I couldn't
Hmm.
find a lot of games. Like if you're looking up Skyrim, there'll be like a billion where it's like Skyrim lore in 1.5 minutes or something crazy, and they just have these little cartoons and they're like talking through it real fast. And yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
So,
because I think
so
when a lot of writers, when you ask them about research, everybody has like their own perspective about what it means. That someone might think, oh, it's just, like digging up information online and just kind of like going down all these rabbit holes and then just kind of getting lost and forgetting why you're doing it. And some people think,
yeah,
okay, I need to find this specific piece of information that is relevant or important to my story. And I think once they find it, they're like, okay, this is exactly what I need. and I'm guessing they don't feel the need to dig any further because they found what they needed. Okay, that fits that puzzle piece perfectly. I need to go on to the next thing and figure out, okay, what do I need to find next? So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
so. I think it also, a lot of people, they it's left over from when they were in school. Oh, I got to go do research. It's like I got to put a term paper together. Oh God, how boring. And so research almost has a negative connotation to it. But for me, I actually like it because I'm trying to make my story better and I want it to be enjoyable for the reader. And I think the research pays off in terms of how the story comes across and what's on the page. And so that it's a win-win for me. And I would assume it is for a lot of other writers.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'd say like I don't always consider what I'm doing research exactly. Like playing
Hmm.
this game is great, but like I would take turns with my son too to make it more fun. So like sometimes say I have other work I gotta be doing. So I'd be like, hey, your turn. So he'd hop on and play for like an hour or two while I sit next to him on the computer, kind of doing work. Whenever there's story moments, I'd look up and listen and pay attention and then get back to work. It's kind of a fun way to be playing a game, first of all, but also to call it research. That's great.
Oh, and it's
Great way to
also
do
good because I'm
research.
sure your son loves doing it. He's getting to do something with dad.
Yeah, he was bragging to his friends. He's like, me and my dad are trying to get to this level in this game, and lots of fun. If you get it, he might get a job too. So he's
I'm
he's
I'm
helping
sure
me
that comes
with all
into
that
the
stuff.
conversation as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's been a lot of fun. But I'd say, yeah, so like doing that, especially when I'm getting ready for one of these kind of jobs, that's a
Hmm.
big part of it is getting myself like one Google Doc where I have all that information for my own brain to process, but also if I want to reference like right before the interview, if there's something that I want to make sure I'm kind of getting across. So I have my story there. Then I go and I definitely get the game. Like if I'm going for a game interview, of course, I go and get
Hmm.
the game and at least play 3 or 4 hours of it.
Sure.
Finish the game if you can, if you have like 3 weeks before the interview. But if it's tomorrow, you know, play 3 or 4 hours of it and then go on YouTube and watch like people reviewing because that's awesome. Is a lot of times you'll hear them critiquing part of the game or complimenting
Hmm.
part of the game, and you're probably going to get that kind of question. If you're in an interview for the game, like what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? You might either agree or disagree with the person on YouTube, but then it's almost like you were out at lunch having a conversation with somebody about this game, right? It's just that it was a couple of people's different opinions on YouTube, and you're like, okay, now I can process this and think about it more than just if you're sitting there by yourself and you're staring at the wall trying to think, what did I like about it? Sometimes the answer will come, but not always, I
Sure.
find. And then these summaries, and then, sometimes it's crazy, like depending on the IP, you might have a bunch of comics you got to read, you might have 400 novels about it you got to read, you might have like George R. R. Martin, Game of Thrones, these world of history books you got to
Hmm.
read. And so, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just not all possible, but I think at least diving into all as much of those as you can, and then going on somewhere like ChatGPT and saying, okay, summarize the main ideas that I should know about in George R. R. Martin's whatever dragon newest book he did, and then it'll probably be able to do a little bit of that, and then you can dive in again and be like, okay, uh, if I need to know the main idea of this house, what is that? And then if you have the book, you can pull that open and read it too, and be like, okay, now I get it. And I think that's very useful.
So here's
Yeah.
here's another question. So you've done. I'm guessing this is not the first time you've had to do research for like a job interview or a possible project. Has it come up during the interview process, like when you're in the office with whoever, and they mention something, and you just happen to have looked that up, or you have experience with that as a result of the research? And how has that worked for you? I mean, has it paid off? Have you not? No one's really covered that before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the main one, of course, always is, "Hey, have you played this game?
Okay,
Have
sure,
you played
sure.
our game?" And your answer to that should never be no. That'd be embarrassing. I don't think they've ever asked, "Have you played this game from start to finish?" You know,
Hmm.
luckily. And sometimes the answer is, of course, yes. Like I played Ghost of Tsushima all the way. I played Ghostwire Tokyo. I recently played some other games that start to finish that were awesome. Like, but not, many of us who are working professionals with kids can't always play these 100-hour games from start to finish, every single one of them.
Sure.
That's just insane. So that if they just say, have you played this game, and you've played it for 3 or 4 hours and you're aware of the main themes and concepts and characters, and watched a couple of YouTube videos to see how it ends and have some thoughts on
Hmm.
how it ends, I think that's enough. And that's definitely come up multiple times for sure. Probably in almost every interview. There's been one or two where I get all prepared and I spend like a week. I'm obsessive too. Like I dive into this stuff. So I spend like a week or so just going hardcore on it, like all day long, losing sleep. And I get to the interview and they're like, "Hey, we think you're awesome. We want to hire you." I'm like, "But don't you want to ask me some questions? I have all these answer's ready to go. That's happened a couple of times too, but that can't
Wow.
hurt, right? Because worst case scenario, you just made yourself smarter about some IP that's out in the world, and that can either inspire something else you're going to write,
Hmm.
or it could be useful for a future interview, or when you're making that game, if you get hired to work on it, you're going to have all this cool knowledge that helps feed into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, I think research, a lot of, don't downplay the importance of doing research on a project, no matter how you're going to use it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's and it can be fun, like especially in our career fields. Make it fun, first of all, right? Like I'm sure there's ways that could be less enjoyable.
Less
So,
academic.
yeah. There's probably ways that are more academic, so less enjoyable,
Hmm.
that I would not be doing. So I think that's part of the key, right? Is like for us, it's great. For people who are going into this career field, you can go play 100 hours of Mass Effect games or however many there are hours wise, and that can all be very useful to your future. I was actually thinking
Hmm.
the other day, I was like, the only time I've lost out on opportunities by not playing games enough. I've never lost out on opportunities for playing too many games. So take that to heart, people listening. Go obsess. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're trying to balance our kids on this kind of stuff, because on the one hand, I have that philosophy where I'm like, this is all good if they're not just watching YouTube unboxing videos because those are
Hmm.
stupid, but if they're actually doing something that's engaging their creative brain, like even
Sure.
playing Roblox, that could be what makes them a billionaire in life. You don't know. Or it could just be what gets them a nice career that pays 80 to 120,000 a year or something. And that's awesome. So, but that balance, of course, we don't want them to become fat, lazy butts either, and then have their bodies not work because they're sitting on their rear ends all day long. Yeah.
Exactly. Spoken like a true dad.
Yes. It's a weird one to balance there, right? It's a thin
Hmm.
line. But then there's also this like idea that we need babysitters, right? So
Wow.
anyway, so enough on the research thing. Did you have any other topics you wanted to cover
No, I
today?
think that was it, because I wanted to talk about, we talked about the movies and talked about the contest, and you wanted to talk about research, and I think that was about it. Yeah, I mean, it's just, things are progressing along nicely. I think that's the best way to put it.
Awesome, really cool. Yeah. And you are working on new screenplays, new specs, or no?
Yeah, I'm still kind of I hit a rough patch with this current rewrite that I'm doing, but so I had to kind of like put the brakes on it and kind of like go back into the outline and put a little more detail, because it's one thing to, when you're outlining in the early stages, and put like big fight scene happens here, then you have to go back and like, okay, what are the details of the fight, what happens,
Yeah.
and how does it tie into the story, and how can you make it go from the scene before it into the scene after it. And so I hadn't done that as much for this time, so that kind of helped, that slowed me down. So that's what I've spent the past couple of days, is kind of like trying to figure out the best way to execute this scene, or actually this sequence, and see how it goes. And I think I may have found a solution. I had to go back and do some editing, which I was trying not to do, but it was kind of necessary in order to actually regain that forward momentum. So hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll start to be a little more productive. So fingers crossed.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Really cool. Yeah, I think I've been slowing down on the specs, except for thinking about that one TV show, drama pilot that I mentioned.
Sure.
Other than that, I'm like, I feel like I have some specs. I feel like I need to start selling some specs more. And then if something comes up where they're like, "Well, we'll pay you to write this," then that's where I'll go. But
That
yeah,
makes
right
sense.
now my creative juices are all in that video game slash novel side of things. So,
Well, hey, whatever works for you.
but that means we have three things covered: novels, games, and screenplays, with the two of us working on our versions of each. Yeah. So
That's
yeah.
true. That's true. Well, well, us, and I'm sure just about everybody else, there's always something they're working on.
Yeah. We don't. Neither of us are doing plays though, so that's what I mean. Like
Oh,
we're writing those, but we're not really. At least I'm not working on any plays. I don't know if
neither am
you.
I.
Yeah. And then these other weird. But it's cool that we've had some people recently on who have. So when we're recording this today is the day that we posted Gregory Blair's interview, and he's doing movies, but he's also a playwright, right? I
And an
believe that
actor
we
in
talked about
plays
that,
as well.
and an actor. Yeah, and we've had a couple others. So people go listen to those past episodes when you're done with this one, and lots of goodies out there. So anything else to add, Paul?
No, I think that'll cover it for today.
Cool, awesome. Well, thank you, listeners, and we should start saying this at the beginning of every episode so people have it on their brain. But please go leave a review. That's always helpful. spread word of mouth. We have these on YouTube and on all the podcast avenues, apps, whatever nowadays. So you can listen and review in multiple places if you want. Yay.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. And again, I'm Justin Sloan. You can find my books on Amazon. This is the Creative Writing Life podcast.
I'm Paul Zeidman. You can check out my screenwriting blog, Maximum Z, at maximumz.blog. I've got my Go Ahead and Ask screenwriting books on Amazon. I'm on Twitter at maximum_Z. I don't promote it as much, but I still am on Instagram at Pez Screenwriting, PEZ Screenwriting. Feel free to follow me. I'm pretty good about following back. Like he said, he's Justin. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.